We are going to move on to something which has everything to do with leadership, because it's about talent and innovation, survival of the fittest and the existential fight for talent and innovation. So please welcome our panel to the stage. Johan Wibergh, Chief Technology Officer, Vodafone, Rachel Randle-Williams, Chief Human Resources Officer at Kindred, Alex Marsh, Head of Klarna UK, and Susanna Campbell, Industrial Advisor, and among other things, board member of Northvolt, which is a very interesting, almost a phenomenon by now, I think, Susanna. Very happy to have you here, and I think this is a good place to start off from. And I thought we'd start with talking about there have been really significant changes around the talent scene the last few years, not only because of COVID, but many other things as well, and also how we attract talent. If we start with you, Johan, what are some of the biggest shifts we are seeing that we have to, as companies, be able to be really good at dealing with?
Well, I think if we talk about the last couple of years, I think it is, as you said, that COVID has changed so much and has really done major changes. And I think whatever I say now is probably not something new for anyone in this room, right? But hybrid working has, of course, changed everything. And things that we thought wasn't possible to do before has shown to be possible to do in hybrid working. We've also seen that COVID has really been speeding up digital transformation. Many companies realized that they had probably already started doing digital transformation, but they realized then during COVID that they had to speed it up to be relevant for businesses. I think it was about 11 years ago that Mark Andreessen said that software is eating the world, and digital transformation requires a lot of software, and hence we have seen a big shortage, a big recruitment of software engineers across the world, and especially the big tech companies. And I think especially during 2021 and the beginning of this year, it was really, really hard to recruit people. And at least we were losing engineers because, face it, the US tech companies were paying crazy salaries to people. But we also see in the last 3-6 months how that has completely changed. I mean, all the reduction of capital going into startups, all the layoffs that have happened, etc. But I think overall, if I then put a little bit of a Vodafone lens on this, I mean, we are Europe's largest fixed and mobile provider. We provide connectivity to about 350 million customers in Europe and Africa. And COVID, of course, had a huge impact for us. And just give a couple of examples on the things you were asking. So I remember a discussion back in 2018. We were driving digital transformation across the company, and we had this debate here in the UK for our UK OPCO about agile teams. And did you need to have the people on the ground in an agile team, or could we utilize some of the people we're having in other countries? And just to give you some numbers then, the technology organization in Vodafone is about 40,000 people. We have more than 10,000 people in India, 3,000 engineers in Egypt. And hence the debate whether we could utilize that capacity in agile teams in the UK was very relevant. And our head of HR said, we cannot have that. People need to be on the ground, be sitting there together in the agile teams to make it work. That debate is gone by completely.
And did you need a COVID to appear to kill that debate?
Yeah, no, and someone said that COVID really had been speeding up the digital transformation and new ways of working. And it has changed a lot. We do remote recruitment. I mean, just in the UK this year, we have hired 55 people that are not close to any of our offices. They are working remotely in the UK. And we have really been increasing the amount of people we are having in either offshore locations or in countries like Romania, because it's become completely acceptable to go for talent where it exists.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. But and I thought maybe, Alex, if we narrow down on talking about some of those truly competitive areas, like the software developers, for example, and this point that I think up until 6 months ago, all we could read about how is the talent crunch, and we couldn't find any talent in that area, and it was extremely expensive, and many startups would say you can't even hire because you cannot compete with some of the bigger guys. Has that changed? Is this a different game now?
Yeah, so I think, the trends that we've just touched on, I think, the environment's changed significantly for many of us here. And I think, the debate, if we'd had this conversation 6 months ago, 12 months ago, would be all about how to attract new talent and sort of the fight for new talent. I think the debate or the kind of discussion and our focus is shifting much more to retention of talent. And I think when you then, that for us is key. How do we retain the talent we've got? It's a different environment. For us, I think you can very quickly jump in that kind of scenario to kind of incentives for the individuals, and that's absolutely valid, and the support you're giving to retain your team. But I think two things that we've been focusing heavily on, I'd really encourage, for everyone here, is get ahead of that. And there are two parts I would suggest to get ahead of that. One is you have to really lead in even harder, double down on how you communicate internally and externally, just given the challenging environments that we're all in, whether that's layoffs or kind of valuations or, economic environment that we're facing. And often in those environments, you can end up becoming quite introspective. And actually, it's the other way around. You need to communicate more and more. And that's, for us, has proved, I think, crucial for kind of retention and people understanding what's actually going on. And often focus goes to external and you neglect internals. I think internal's key. I think the second part to getting ahead of it is being super laser focused with the talent that you've got on being prioritized, because you understand then hopefully that it's a challenging environment that you're facing, but then often you can say, well, what's actually changed in our organization? What's changed in what I'm doing in my job or my priorities? And if that's not changed, it's quite confusing for you as individuals. So I think actually what we've done is to be then laser focused, say, yes, externally the environment's changing. We need to then change our prioritization. Things will need to stop. Things will need to accelerate. Team structures will need to change. And being very proactive about that rather than reactive. I think if you get those fundamentals right, then you get to the third piece, which is about, right then, specific kind of approaches and tactics and incentives that can then help you retain and reward the talent that you've got within your organization. I think that's a kind of a sequence of events or processes that how we've been tackling this.
So it's been a significant learning for you as an organization as well to go through.
Absolutely. It's just a very different, I think in the past, a lot of it has just been focused, it has been focused on just bring people in, putting more in hyper-growth. And I think that had been, really the mindset. Now it's being much more disciplined in terms of how we're investing, who we're retaining, and what they're working on.
And I think that's interesting because many organizations and many of our talents have actually never been through a recession before, right? So whether we're pre-recession or in recession or something, it's new for many, not for a Vodafone, but for many organizations and talents. I think that's
and
leaders.
That's been, I think, a cultural challenge. Many of the people that had, we had in our organization, we've been running for 17 years, but many of them hadn't been through an environment like this. And even if it wasn't impacting them directly, the ripple effect, that could create. And it goes back to why I think that internal communication is so important, so people understand in real time what's going on. I think that communication is vital. I think another trend we are seeing, and you touched upon it, Johan, but it really is that talent markets are becoming more global. And I think if I'm right, Susanna, at Northvolt you have more than 120 nationalities, and you are 6-7 years old or something. It's not something that's been happening for a long time. So this must have an enormous impact on both attraction and some of the things we talked about before, actually attracting them to certain countries and all. What has this meant? What has it shifted for you? Or what's new in that, the way you have to deal with that?
To me, Northvolt is pretty unique in that way. It was the first case, at least in Sweden, in Stockholm, that I saw that went that international that quickly. But it was pretty apparent to us that we needed to. I started working with Northvolt 6 years ago, and obviously the battery knowledge and battery competence, we have very little in Europe, to be frank. Most of that competence is based in South Korea or Japan, so it was very apparent that this is not going to be a Swedish play because we don't have that kind of knowledge. Also, having the two founders, Peter and Paolo, coming from Tesla in the US, it was just a different kind of entrepreneurship as well in terms of going with global ambition and going bold in terms of that. So we had to, for many reasons, look at the global market. Also, one of the first decisions we made was to build a huge gigafactory up in Skellefteå in northern Sweden, where we needed several thousand employees. And Skellefteå being a tiny town up in northern Sweden, it was also obvious that there too we needed to think differently, because recruiting only in the local market was just not an option. Those people were not there. We had the hypothesis that about 50 locally and 50% from other places. So straight away, it was about how we set up the recruiting team, how we thought about talent. Swedish was just never used. I used to come out of the streets of Stockholm, walk into the office, and it's kind of at the coffee machine. It was just, of course, Swedish was not used, just to create that kind of inclusive culture. But I think most importantly, to create this kind of company is also that we're so mission driven. I was actually doing a session with a bunch of the employees just a couple of weeks ago, and I got the question kind of why do people stay? Why are we here? And I think there's a real difference, because each and every one of us, including me, know exactly why we're there. We know exactly why we're there and why we're working so hard to get this to work. Because we want to transform, not only make the world electric, but also green. And that's actually a real difference. And I actually think in terms of the talent market and talent attraction, and we're still recruiting, we're doing about 150 to 200 people per month in terms of recruitments. I think that is an extremely important point for all companies. And for us, I would say it's very easy because it's in our DNA. That's why we exist. Make oil history is our tagline. And that's what we all kind of buy into when we work at the company. But I think it actually means something for all companies to actually, to think about that one in a real way and not just make it some words that are on a piece of paper, but to truly get people to feel it. Because young talent and the best talent, if you look at surveys out there, they're actually prepared to even take less pay working for that kind of company. And we have had no problem attracting foreign talent to Stockholm and even to Västerås and Skellefteå because people know why they're there.
So it would have been tougher if you were not clear on your purpose to attract other nationalities to Skellefteå, for example. It's not Stockholm.
So much tougher. About 6 or 12 months ago, I was doing a tour of the recycling pilot facility that we have in Västerås. And it was funny, when we'd done the tour, I reflected on the fact that no one was Swedish of the people who'd kind of guided us around and we'd talked to. It was global talent. They were from the US, plenty of people from India, super skilled engineers who'd kind of searched the world for this kind of mission and wanted to join. So they're there to make a difference, and they're there because they buy into the whole being of the company.
That's really cool to hear. When you think about the session we had before on soft power, does that play in terms of the image of a soft power country or where you are? Does that play into your attracting talent from other countries, you think?
I would say absolutely. It depends a bit on how you define soft power, of course, but I would say that also in a Stockholm setting, it works quite well, because we do have, someone was mentioning the whole parental leave and social security system. We have many soft values in our society that also works with a company that has, and green is both a soft value, but also a hard value in my mind, because it's soft because it's good for society, but it's hard because it's also, I believe, the most profitable position you can have in the market that's growing. So that is one, definitely important.
Thank you. Really interesting, Sanna. I just want to stay with this mission and purpose a bit, because for you, for your talent, it's so obvious, right? You're here to transform into a green, sustainable. But you also made the comment that you can see from research that young talent in general, this is more important to them. So I think the purpose, the mission, and communication becomes more important. So how do you, maybe, I know you are passionate about this, Rachel, too. How do you do this if you're a company who wasn't born out of a mission like a Northvolt? How do you make it real and not a corporate slogan, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And this is going to sound a little bit cheesy, but it's actually doing what you say you're going to do. And I think we owe a lot of our culture to our leaders at Kindred. Our ambition, for anyone that doesn't know, Kindred is a gambling operator globally. And our ambition, our mission, and I think what we live and breathe through is our values around trying to drive down any revenue that we take from harmful gambling. We were the first company to go out and launch that, and we've asked many other companies to follow us in that mission. We came up with that through our people. It wasn't something that the CEO decided one day. So I think actually having your people work with you on the change means that they live and breathe that. And from a talent attraction perspective, our people are very happy to go out and talk about that every day. They're happy to go to summits like this. They're happy to go to career fairs. They're happy to write blogs. They talk about it on their own social media. So actually the power of developing a mission through your people, even if it wasn't what you had before, it just resonates with the whole organization and enables you to, like me today, come out and talk about that. And wholeheartedly agree. Around young talent being much more interested in that mission statement, being much more interested in sustainability, diversity issues. But we're seeing that actually that's filtering through into the older generations now. They care more about that as well. And up until very recently, most of the people we were talking to had 3 offers on the table. Do we want to throw an extra £2,000 at them, or do we want to have a really strong conversation with them about our values, about what we're trying to achieve, and being part of that mission? And that's more the route that we take. We're very, very fair, equitable payers. I will say that. We don't trouble our people with that, but we're seeing more and more people care about that in the process. They want to go through an interview process that lives and breathes the values that they expect to see from the company. They want that to be fast, they want that to be transparent, and they want to leave knowing that actually that's not just a slogan that Kindred's saying, that's actually what they're going to get when they arrive. And we actually find that we see in our onboarding surveys that we come out really strongly in that. You actually said this and you've delivered on that, which I think is really important for candidates today.
Yeah,
I think just to follow up on that point, just starting by doing is really important in this. Another company I'm on the board of is Kinnevik, a Swedish investment company, also with an office here. We were a few years ago, we established a target to at least 10% of the capital that we invest in new ventures is in companies that has female entrepreneurs or female-led companies. And a statement like that, which we've actually over-delivered on the target, so it's not, and it's scale-ups, so it's not the earliest stage startups either. So not only have we delivered on that target and generated value in that way, but we've also, it becomes an identity for the company, for everyone, and something that everyone is really proud of, that we're not only making good investments, we're also making a difference to drive an issue that we think is really important.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Does that tally with a company like Vodafone, who's been around so much longer and the brand name is so known? Is it still important?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so important, especially in a big company, that you can, and was said here about having a purpose-driven company, especially younger people want to work for a company that resonates with their values, etc. So it clearly is. And it's very important, going back to what we discussed before here about having a communication out in the organization, really about what the company stands for, what you're going to be achieving it, and building something that you say, okay, this is what we're going to do, and then continuously report on how you are achieving it, creating the credibility of what has been said here, and creating that trust in the company. So important.
Yeah, making it real and being part of the identity as well, right? I think that's...
Absolutely.
Just want to make sure I don't miss anybody here.
And I think that
becomes
very important for maybe some smaller companies. Kindred's not, as well known as Vodafone, and our authenticity around that mission and our values is incredibly important to our people, and it's incredibly important to our brand identity when we go out to the market. We do have to have very credible conversations around that because we aren't, PepsiCo or whoever in the market.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So there's something else. We talked about recruitment, and I was with some young talent a while ago, and they lectured me that don't ask me for long CVs and long recruitment processes and references and all of it. We don't function like that. We don't work like that. So Rachel, do we scrap the CV in recruitment?
I don't know if we scrap it completely, but I think we look beyond it. And I think, what we work within our talent acquisition team is actually we've increased it. And not because I, like to throw money at my director of talent acquisition, but because we want them to invest more time in talking to the candidates. And that's twofold for us. We want people that believe in our mission and want to be part of that. And we want to really understand why they want to work for our organization. But actually, it means that we can slim down our processes. So we know that candidates don't want to be waiting around for weeks. They want to have a very fast communication. They want transparency about what they're being assessed on, and they want that offer turned around really quickly. So I don't think the CV is totally
Completely
out of the
dead.
window just yet. But also, we're looking at LinkedIn profiles. We're looking at other things. We're not waiting for CVs to fall into inboxes. There's a much more agile way now that we look at our candidate attraction.
But it's shortening the processes, and it's definitely becoming more agile. Johan.
Yeah, just to build upon that, put things in context, because I think there is a new way of recruiting. I mean, just to put things in context on our journey, I mean, we have been a telco, and we decided 5 years ago that we're going to go from being a telco to a tech comms company. Communications company, also with a technology focus, because to find the growth in the market. And we've been working with many of the US West Coast companies, and I've had the great help from AWS and Facebook and Google, etc., in changing the culture of the company and growing. We have been on purposely been insourcing. So during my time, we have recruited 10,000 people. Every time we insource, we save 20 to 30% of the cost, and we get a better result coming out of it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I'm a big supporter of building competence and skills.
That's also a shift we're seeing, right? Yeah.
We have turned around the recruitment. It used to be you go on the recruitment website and you look for free positions. What we do instead is the candidate drop their CV on the website, and then there's an AI engine that comes back and say, we have these positions that we think would fit for you. Trying to shortcut it, make it faster, and then connect it to a recruitment process that we learned from Amazon, which is about turning it around extremely quickly, doing the interviews and closing quickly with the people. So I think with that, we have recruited over the last 12 months about more than 4,000 people into the company worldwide, and it's really something that works at scale.
This is the first meeting the first time you meet a company, right? So if that doesn't impress you a bit, I think it's it's sensitive. Alex, I thought of your point on what's happened over the six months and how talent, the access to talent has shifted. Does this open up opportunities for other companies, maybe even competitors that are now getting access to talent that they couldn't get access to before? You think?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I look back on some of the challenges we had earlier in the year, so we had a round of layoffs in the spring, and it was challenging internally and externally. I think one of the positives that we took from that was how the broader kind of fintech technology sector rallied around to try and help support and get people into roles, and we saw really positively, really good success there very quickly, people getting into new roles and recognizing that there were some amazing people. So I think that was incredibly kind of a positive, as a unexpected positive that came out of that. And you're seeing that now still happening now, kind of 6-9 months later, there's other technology companies, coming out with layoffs, and, people are rallying around to support there, which I think is really good. I think go back to the point about, retention and purpose. I think they do go really hand in hand, in the sense that Klarna, we increasingly less will hire external individuals into senior roles, and we see that part of that journey of being actually, it's almost like a very long induction process, and actually more success with bringing in young talent who are tied to the purpose, tied to our values and our leadership principles, nurturing them through the organization, and then really investing to retain them within the organization, rather than having to bring people into these senior roles, and then there's that struggle of either the culture or the ways of working. Actually, by that stage, they've kind of built their network internally, externally. They understand the organisation and grow into the
senior
roles. And so I think a lot of our focus on new hiring is now in those junior roles. And one part I'd just briefly add is that the lovely comment about kind of Swedish values and where that's kind of parental leave, etc. I think increasingly for us, when we're hiring younger talent in the UK, for example, the fact that we honour those same benefits for us kind of in the UK as you would see if you were employed in Sweden is increasingly being valued, which I think is great. We've got amazing stories of men and women taking parental leave and sharing those responsibilities and being role models then for more people to take advantage and utilise those benefits that they deserve to access.
I also think
I think we have some. Sorry, I think we have some questions here. So let's go to the audience. Would you please say your names and?
Christian Wamstad from RegTech Distribute. I just have a question, because you're talking a lot about mission, retaining, attracting, all of these things. But, a lot of the talent you are attracting or retaining, they're in a situation now, where, cost of living is going through the roof. So, mission, purpose, and so forth. How do you deal with that? Because that is not on mission and purpose. Yeah, that's kind of what they come to you. But at the same time, electricity prices in Sweden and Norway was at the highest, more or less, ever yesterday. Yesterday, and the same in the UK. I want to understand, like, how do you deal with that? Because the other one is more soft powers. This is kind of more real.
Who wants to go?
I can start. I mean, it's a really, really good question, and it's a key topic, especially now, and it will be hard for another coming 2 years. It's really, first of all, it's about where you can find cost savings in the company, and at least we are still in the situation where we, by employing engineers and driving digital transformation, driving automation, we are driving cost savings, and so it's about finding cost savings overall in the organization. Then on salaries on people, we have been modest in our increase on salaries. And we are instead investing in other things with our employees. We have, for instance, introduced a technical career path. All companies have a manager career path. We also have a technical career path, 7 levels, from a starter up to a fellow. Super interesting, a lot of buzz about that in the company. It's about finding a good story, a purpose that the people believe in. But at the end of the day, you need to get the P&L to work. And it also means then utilizing competence in different parts of the world.
Can we do a quick one on the panel? Are you modest? Who's being modest here on pay, and who's saying we'll go?
I mean, we are tracking the rates. We're tracking the rates.
Tracking the rates,
We've seen historically a few companies have made a very quick reaction and done one-off cost of living increases, and actually then they've taken lower salary increases. And actually, when you look at that as a compound increase, it's nowhere near where it should be. So we're looking geography by geography at what we should do. So we're doing significantly more than we have done before. And of course, you have to do both. You have to concentrate on giving people a really strong level of remuneration right now. Otherwise, frankly, the attrition cost that we will take off the back of getting that wrong will far, far exceed the cost that we've put into a little bit of extra OPEX to retain our employees.
But I was actually just going to say, I think in a world like this, maybe being mission-driven is even more important, because the issues, every company more or less has these kind of issues with the world going, business world going south. And for employees, most companies just cannot compensate fully for the cost inflation that we see for consumers.
I guess the environment.
Then maybe actually feeling at home at a company with more that matters more than the paycheck is even more important. That's at least my belief.
Thank you. We're going to fit in one final question over here.
Yes, hi again. Victor Hattenberg from AMBA. So I love the global nature of all your companies. And one thing that we really want to do as well for AMBA is attract a lot of global talent. We're looking at India, some in South America, but it's difficult when you don't know that many people. How do you guys go about attracting talent from perhaps markets where you haven't been present in before? Love to hear that.
I think if I start with Northvolt, it was partly if you look at the management team in the start, we have a lot of Swedes employed too, of course. So just to be very open about that. But given that Peter and Paolo, the founders, just came straight from Silicon Valley working for Tesla, we have a whole bunch of ex-Tesla people, which is kind of their network. The guy who was employed to run R&D, it was a Japanese man named Ano-san, and he then therefore was kind of plugged into the Japanese and South Korean kind of battery cluster. So he knew people and therefore managed to recruit I would say, a super strong R&D team that we still, most of them are still in Sweden. So it's also about, I think if you're an all Swedish management team sitting there, it's a bit more challenging and you have to overcome that.
So you built an international team
start
around you,
international,
which is,
and then important. We insourced recruiting straight away. It was the biggest team we built early on, and we did not have only Swedes. So we have a few Swedes, but then we have the Italian who knows Southern Europe and who has a network there. Then we have the ex-Tesla people, and we have the Asians recruiting for R&D and so on. I think your recruiters have to have the same profiles as the people you want to attract.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And with that, I think I'm getting a sign over here that we need to move on. But thank you so much to this panel. And we're going to move over to Nick and talk about something where you really need talent. Thank you.